turn to our scripture in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verses 21 through 28. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. Just then a man in their synagogue who was possessed by an evil spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," said Jesus sternly. "Come out of him." The evil spirit shook the man violently and came out of him with a shriek. The people were all so amazed that they asked each other, "What is this? A new teaching and with authority. He even gives orders to evil spirits and they obey him." News about him spread quickly over the whole region of Galilee. This is the reading of the word. With authority comes responsibility. They don't tell you that. When you're learning things. Because when you learn to read when you're little, that means you have a responsibility to keep all that information somewhere in your brain, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Or when you're working a job, and you've gone through training, and you're set loose. And then someone comes to you or calls you about something that you're supposed to know. You're given the authority of knowledge and the responsibility to act on it. That's one of the first stories of Christ that we hear in the Gospel of Mark. After he's called the disciples, he begins teaching with authority. And not only does he teach with authority, he acts on that authority in driving out an evil spirit. It's not easy or fun to think of that that's all that Jesus gets to do now. We at least know that he gets to do a bunch of other things. But how many of us sometimes feel the drudgery of our authority? I was thinking of this in some different ways. You know, we're in the midst of potty training, unfortunately. But I, as a parent, have been given this authority of knowledge. And I have a responsibility to use it. It's the same with our faith lives. And I want to share with you a story. When I was younger, this is a personal story. I don't like to share them often, but this is pertinent. When I was younger, I struggled with my relationship with God. You see, I was angry at God. I didn't want to deal with church. I didn't want to deal with what I had to do or when I had to do it. You see, when I was younger, I lost all of my grandparents in a very quick time span, and that changed me. I was also dealing with health concerns and issues that we couldn't figure out what was wrong at that moment in time. And all of those emotions and all of those things weighed down, and I finally was just like, "God, you suck." How many of us have felt that? I'm not the only one, I know. Because it's not an easy experience to say, "I'm angry at you, God." But you see, at that same time in my life, fortunate little me, I had gotten and been given the authority of our youth group. I was one of our leaders. And with that authority came a responsibility to others. And sometimes that's the hardest part in our lives. And we have to sit there and take a moment and realize, wait a second, I still have a responsibility. You see, Jesus at the start of his ministry, it seems easier at the beginning, doesn't it? He doesn't have as much oppression at this moment in time. He doesn't have people coming up against him and saying, well, you know, you don't know anything. I'm going to try to catch you and trip you up until the point of his arrest and crucifixion. With authority in our faith comes a responsibility to live that faith out, no matter how difficult it may be. That's not easy. Sometimes it is hard to get up on Sunday morning and make it to church. Sometimes it's hard to even have a conversation with God in it. Because we don't want the responsibility that comes from that conversation. Do we? The thing is that it's not just us that has an authority and responsibility relationship. It is also God who has that same relationship with us. We were talking about it in Bible study today about the two-way street of a relationship. Can you even have one if you are not reciprocating? You can't, in case you're wondering. You see, God, through God's authority, has a responsibility towards us. And that responsibility plays out throughout the New Testament through our understanding of Jesus and how we come to know Jesus in our lives. Jesus teaches with authority what he knows of God. And by teaching with authority, he takes on a responsibility of ownership, a responsibility of relationship, a responsibility of truth. Remember how I said it a couple weeks ago, we're not Jesus? Perhaps that's where some of our internal struggles come in this time and in this age and in this world that we live in. It's easier in some ways to just sit and accept that we're still learning. Because we put a high value on learning, don't we? But can we truly prove that we have learned something if we do not act on it or live it out? It doesn't help when you're taking that wonderful test and you don't put anything down and then your teacher asks you, well, You got an F. Why did you not write anything down? Well, it's all in my head. I just can't write it out. How many of you who are teachers would take that as an answer? Or how many of us tried to pull that one? The truth is in order to show we have learned something, we have to use it. That's why Jesus teaches with authority. He's gotten to the point where he knows it so well that others are astounded. You hear it in the man who calls out to him, I know who you are. But it comes down and it begs the question of who are we? As representatives of Christ, where do we take our scriptural learning and our understanding of faith and act on it? Where do we take responsibility for our learning and turn it into action? It's not easy, and sometimes you have to fake it. Because we have responsibilities outside of our faith understanding. We have responsibilities to our family, to our parents, to our children, to our loved ones. Sometimes we catch ourselves in a role of expectation that we might not be feeling called towards at that moment in time, but we said yes. And then a strange thing happens. You know, I was telling you the time of my life when I pretty much didn't want to go to church, didn't want to say anything, didn't want to do anything, didn't want to be around anyone who said, oh, well, God's got a plan for you. I faked it. I grew up in a house where my parents made me go to church. Unless you were sick or we were out of town on vacation, you went to church. Not necessarily a bad thing. Because you know, the minute you walk in these doors, it's not filled with perfect people who are all singing high and wonderful praises to God. We're surrounded by questions, by a desire for deeper knowledge, for a desire for answers. We're surrounded by individuals who are not always sure of where they are at, but they know in some way, in some possibility, being in a powerful presence, which is what we create when we gather in God's name, though it be with hearts filled with praise or hearts filled with questions, we will gain something. Maybe it's just the strength to go on to the next day or week until the next Sunday. Maybe it's an epiphany type moment. Maybe it's Christ truly driving out that evil spirit. For this man, we don't know necessarily what that was, but consider the spirits that live in your life that are taking over your faithful living. When we come through the doors, that's what we get. It's not cut and dried, it's not perfect, it's not wonderful. but if we trust in the authority of what we have been given, and we trust in the fact that God's love for us knows no bounds of responsibility, then we're doing pretty good indeed.